Mr. Zlotnick?
Yeah, well, we're getting through them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one, we've raised before, groundwater, as you identified in the plan, is critical to the state, and we certainly agree, and we just believe that a statement that groundwater is largely unregulated is not correct. You've stated in prior meetings correctly that the issue is there's not state oversight of groundwater, but that does not mean it's largely unregulated. Ms. Gray's agency regulates her basin, and local agencies throughout the state regulate groundwater basins. So we just think that's factually incorrect to say. If you want to say something like, there's no state oversight, certainly that would be a correct statement. We think that's being changed with the SBX issues and the more transparency. And the transparency is a different issue than local oversight. So that was the issue there. In the issue or requested change, we offer the edit down at the bottom there, and then
That's
also
the lack of state oversight means that.
Yeah, just take that out, we think, and you still get your point about limited and incomplete information is available.
Suppose you said insufficiently regulated instead of largely.
If that would be better, but okay.
I guess it depends on what you consider regulating. In terms of water quality, there's not a well, at least for public purposes, that's not highly regulated by the regional water quality control boards. If you're talking about volume of extractions, that's an issue. If you're talking about regulations about where to drill a well, you can't drill a well without a permit from a local agency. So I think, to your point, Greg, it probably needs clarification as to what part of the unregulated part of groundwater is the policy concerned about. Because if it's water quality or if it's punching a hole in the ground, those are about as regulated as they can be.
I agree with Randy's statement. I just add another thing. The real dilemma on groundwater is not tomorrow's dilemma. It's a dilemma 20, 50, 75 years from now when we are no longer able to use groundwater basins for a host of reasons. And what then happens? And I think that's a discussion that nobody talks much about, but it has as much to do with the co-equal goals as anything else. Groundwater may not have state regulation, unlike most states in America, but the reality is we have recognized for 160 years that property owners who can access it are entitled to, and there are, absent adjudications or contractual agreements that are legally enforceable, no restrictions on that. The implications for a water policy, and since we're looking out to the year 2100, who has to give up water they're currently using so someone who's currently using underground water that won't be around gets a replacement? That, to me, that's the most important policy dilemma. And the other thing that is important, if sophisticated and responsive water management tools are going to help get us through the next 50 or 75 years, which I actually think are true, how do you integrate in the water, the supply implications of groundwater when your water policy setting, at least for the state as a whole, doesn't include that? Water board jurisdiction doesn't include groundwater except under limited circumstances, and so on. I think it's a very complex problem. Apart from all the politics and the painful difficulty about it, it's a very tough management issue to guarantee reliable water supply when that big a share of the supply is kind of like an off-budget line. It's there, but it's not going to be there forever in some cases unless we're careful.
And this actually is something we agreed with SWIFT on, and we said we wanted to change the language.
Yeah, right. So staff on that had suggested they want to clarify the problem language. I predict all clarifications will be equally controversial, but I think it's actually worth the added effort. This is all narrative stuff. We made no regulatory. This is all narrative, right?
Right.
Yeah, no regulation. So any objection to staff tinkering with that language? Okay, without objection.